Someone once said, better late than never. Here we are. It's the college football show on a Monday, getting your media days started here for the ACC and the Big Ten. Of course, we'll dive into that a little bit later with the Big Ten teams headed to Vegas and the ACC headed to Charlotte. But Leanne Herring, she has already made her way to San Antonio and the Texas High School Coaches Association meetings that are going on this week. Leanne, good to see you. How you doing?
It's good to see you. We have definitely been on the move, Mark. We will get back to our regularly scheduled program on Wednesday. I know that everybody is eager to hear about the recruiting rumblings, but what better place to be than the Alamo City, in the heart of one of the most fertile lands when it comes to recruiting, the Lone Star State. We are in day 2 of the Texas High School Coaches Association Coaching School. It is the annual trek where all the coaches, not just in football, but all the sporting coaches come to build their skill, to get to meet with coaches, get to learn from. We've been sitting in some of the events for the last couple of days, Mark. Yesterday, we got to catch the panel of all the college football coaches in the FBS reside here in Texas. We got to hear from everyone from Houston's Willie Fritz to Dave Longo, who will be playing, of course, Kentucky here later in the SEC, and 2 big programs that we've really talked a lot about when it comes to the recruiting trail in Texas Tech and Joey McGuire and the rise down there, and of course, none other than the Texas Longhorns. Coach Sark was down here. Mike Elko of Texas A&M had a lot of remarks to make, but got to catch some of that panel. And it was just really, a general panel of questions and stuff. But the really focus on there, of course, is the things we've talked about here, Mark, it's just the transition of having to navigate in this new era of recruiting, more importantly, NIL. A lot of the things, Mark, that you and I have talked about on our recruiting show as far as roster management, basically able to adapt and adjust. But, one of the biggest takeaways that I talked about that I really enjoyed hearing from Coach Sark and Coach McGuire, like I said, 2 programs from the Big 12 and the SEC that have really taken the bull by the horns when it comes to the recruiting trail and really have adapted, adjusted real well. But, both Coach Sark and Coach McGuire talked about, how intricate role that the general manager is playing in the rise of their programs on the recruiting trail. They talked and they addressed all the high school football coaches here in Texas from all the major programs, from 1A all the way to 6A, talking about getting back to the roots. Texas is such a fertile ground, Mark, and they know the relationships here matter. Even though we're in dead period, you could easily tell that each one of those coaches was making their pitch, thanking the Texas high school football coaches down here for the work that they're doing, but kind of circling around back. It was really interesting to see the take on GM, the programs that Texas is putting together, and obviously Texas Tech has been on the rise, especially on the recruiting trail. But it was really interesting to hear their take about 2 ball coaches that really want to focus on coaching ball, and Joey McGuire at Texas Tech and Steve Sarkisian and his Texas Longhorns. And they've really talked about the role of the GM and how that they're really utilizing them more so they can get back to coaching, so they can get back into developing, So that was a really interesting insight to take, how, they're really adapting and adjusting and embracing the role of having that front office staff similar to the NFL. They addressed everything, one of the biggest things that we've talked a lot about, Mark, you and I on the show, is, the era of trying to build relationships again on the high school recruiting trail. I've said it time and time again. I think now, Mark, that the transfer portal has kind of not lost its novelty, but is no longer a new thing. I said at some point that the college football coaches, especially the SEC and the major conference, were going to have to revisit how they were going to recruit at the high school level. And I think here they really talked a lot about it to one of the biggest stages of recruiting trail. So it's been a really interesting time here, here in the Alamo City, in the thick of it, just kind of hearing the coaches, at a different kind of level, address these high school coaches about some of the issues that we've talked a lot about, from NIL to recruiting.
Got Leanne Herring here. Of course, you can catch her work at the Rebel Walk and also Cat's Wire. And we're pleased to have her, of course, here at the Voice of College Football, our On the Move show, typically on Wednesdays and at 8:30 Eastern. Leanne there at the Texas High School Coaches Association convention this week. And I know that you wanted to touch upon a huge commitment made for the Texas Longhorns. They had a late battle with Ohio State for arguably the best running back in the nation, one Derek Cooper. And again, Texas was able to keep him at home.
Since we're here in Texas, I figured that we do our crude rumblings talking none other with the Texas Longhorns. Derek Cooper, one of the most highly coveted running backs in this 2026 class, of course. Everybody from the SEC to the ACC was making their pitch, but when it was all said and done, Coach Sark and his staff were able to land the number 2 running back in the country. We're going to break him down a little bit more on Wednesday, take down his film and whatnot. But again, on Sunday night, the battle was finally over. We know that we're heading into that late run. And, another good point that Coach Joey McGuire made out of Texas Tech, because, of course, we know his roots are in high school coaching football before he took over at Tech. But he talked about, now that, really encouraging a lot of the young guys. There was, what was his advice on the recruiting trail? And he really alluded to the fact that when he was coaching high school football, that he really wanted his players, when they know where they wanted to go, to shut down their commitment, so that's one of the things he's also encouraging, not to let these things drone out. Because some of the topics that were addressed, is should we, as far as should we go to one window in the portal? Should we have multiple signing days at the high school level? So again, Texas doing a fantastic job securing the number 2 running back in the country in Derek Cooper on Sunday. And with that, of course, we know that's going to shoot them up on the recruiting trail as far as where they're standing. Of course, what I always say, Mark, about rankings and whatnot. What's going to translate, but the Texas Longhorns are definitely putting themselves in a key position, moving up the ranks. But I can't talk about recruiting, especially here in Texas, without talking about those big guys up front in the offensive line. Texas, Coach Sarkisian, and the rest of the coaches that were here from the FBS schools across Texas, really talking about, like they say, everything is bigger and better in Texas. Being here in the stage, even though it's dead period, like I said, it's a bit of a recruiting pitch for all these head coaches looking to, continue to recruit heavy. The Texas Longhorns are really setting themselves in a strong position, for some elite blue chip players as we get into the tail end mark of the summer recruiting season. Again, July looks a little bit different. Everybody's had a little bit of a break. The staffs have been rested, but definitely that has not stopped them from texting and calling and all these kind of things, But going back to those Texas Longhorn trenches, the Longhorns know that everything is bigger and better in Texas, and Kyle Flood has really done a strong job in retooling that Texas offensive line. For the long haul for the Longhorns. And he's really made it his mission to get in there and not only get physicality, but also build depth for the future. Some names to watch. These are names that we've talked about. We've had him on the show. We can't talk about anybody else other out of right here in that Houston area talent that I always talk about. The number 1 offensive tackle in the state, in the country, and the number 1 player coming out of the 2027 class, Kennedy Brown out of Kingwood. Everybody, well over 44 offers. We've had the opportunity to see him in the flesh. We know how physical, what kind of guy he can be across the line. He is more than as advertised. Texas is setting itself in a great position. Of course, like I said, this is a kid who's offer list. He could go anywhere in the country, and he still has a little bit of a ways, but Texas is really setting themselves for the number 2 overall player in this 2027 class, the number 1 player in Texas, and the number 1 offensive tackle. Some of the other guys, of course, that we know in the SEC that have been looking at him, Alabama, Georgia, Nebraska, Clemson, Oregon, are some of all the key players. But Kyle Flood is really building it in the trenches, Mark. And, Kennedy Brown is one of those names to watch in this late recruiting period heading into fall season and fall camp. Another name that we've talked about, 4-star Demarion Johnson out of Tyler, Texas. He's also made a string of visits, whatnot, with the Texas Longhorns. And that's another name to watch. And, of course, we round things out. Another guy to watch for the Longhorns in the trenches on that offensive line is the French phenom himself, Ismail Kamara, out of Gilmore, Texas. Another East Texas guy that everyone has their sights on. We've had the opportunity, of course, to talk with Kamara. Ole Miss is another SEC school that has been recruiting him hard. Again, he's already building up that dream offer sheet. But he talked about early with us that as far as schools are, it's all about continuing his journey and building relationships. He talks about, how the portal can be, but he wants to go to a place where he can really develop. And one of the big things he always stresses about, like he says, he knows that people are going to constantly be calling him and looking to knock on his door and sell him a pitch. But he is all about connections. But the Texas Longhorns have really positioned themselves in a good standing for the French phenom out of Gilmore, Texas, Ismail Camarera.
Leanne Herring joining us as she always does to break down recruiting. She is our ace, and she is delivering this week from the Texas High School Coaches Association convention. And Leanne, so this goes on just through today. It was yesterday and today, correct?
They will have some more events tomorrow. This is what they call it, the coaching school. So they have colleges from all over Texas. They have workshops. This is basically like a development for all coaches. While we focus obviously on the football angle, there's coaches here from water polo to swimming to track and field for both men's and women's events. So again, if you are a college football coach and this is the place to be during dead period, because again, you may be off the clock, but again, recruiting never sleeps, and plenty of the schools are doing well down here as far as the recruiting pitch. But it will go on till tomorrow. We're wrapping things up today that we get back onto the recruiting thing. We have a little bit more, like I said, because we're in the heart of Texas. We've got to focus on those Texas schools. Again, another guy that the Longhorns have set themselves up really well for. They're going to be battling with the Oklahoma Sooners. Ole Miss has also been a name in the mix for 5-star blue chip edge in Jay Krill. It's been a battle. That's going to be an interesting one, Mark, to see where that one heads to. Like we said, the Brett Venables, the Oklahoma Sooners have seemed to really have the edge coming into this the end of official visits at the cross of June and kind of into this later summer dead period, where they've been the team to talk about. Lane Kiffin and his staff have also been a team that's kind of been creeping up. But it seems, again, the Longhorns are really making a surge this July, even though it's a dead period. Like I say, I can't stress enough. There's definitely something going on down in Austin, but Jay Krill and the Texas Longhorn battle between the Oklahoma Sooners is one to watch. We've had an opportunity to talk with Jake. Obviously what he's seen in some of the schools, but what he really, again, is really looking for. He's going to be making his commitment announcement here very, very soon in the upcoming weeks. He said trust is the biggest thing for him, Mark, when it comes to his decision. This is not something he's taken lightly. Again, this is another kid, an elite blue chip kid that has the opportunity to go anywhere that he wants to go. He's taking the process. Again, this is another recruitment, especially because edge is such a coveted position in this recruiting class, Mark. I really feel that let's say he becomes a Texas Longhorn. I don't think this is going to stop the Sooners from continuing to recruit him. I think this will be another heated battle till the end.
Leanne Herring on the Rebel Walk and also Cat's Wire. You can catch it right there. And of course, the easiest way to do that is just follow her on X. You see her X handle right there. And she, of course, this is my favorite role of what she does is, of course, here at the Voice of College Football. So I'm a little partial when it comes to that. Is there anything we missed, Leanne?
Well, just to close things out, because I know you have to get to the rest of all the topics of college football. We have Big Ten Media Days and all those things going on. But, Mark, when you and I usually are talking about a flip, we're talking about Lane Kiffin flipping a player to the SIP. But it looks like the tables may be turned. The Texas Longhorns could be having something brewing in those recruiting rumblings down here in Texas. The number one linebacker in the country, Isaiah Williams, is a familiar name that the Ole Miss Rebels know very well. That's also a name when he committed to Ole Miss that I told you that it was going to be a very interesting recruitment for the long haul. Lane Kiffin and his staff, of course, were able to flip the talented linebacker at the time when he was committed to the Florida Gators. However, he was an interesting case, despite his elite talent that you can't deny when you watch his film. He is as advertised as I'd like to say. And of course, we've broken him down. But one of the key things that I talked about early on when he announced that he was going to be flipping to Lane Kiffin down in Oxford was if the Rebels were going to be able to keep him, because he had already been committed to previous other schools prior than being committed to Florida, and now of course Ole Miss. It looks like the Texas Longhorns looking to address some areas of need, and edge has been that has been one of the positions. So it'll be interesting to see if Isaiah Williams will leave Oxford to come down to Austin, and flip back to the Texas Longhorns. So again, there's a lot of things brewing in Texas, but it's been a great couple days. Again, getting to hear, of course, all the college coaches across the board really make their pitch. And just be really grateful. But, I always enjoy coming to this event, Mark, because, as much as we like to talk about the development that goes on, the recruiting that goes on the college level, this is really where it starts with the coaches at the high school level. They are really the ones that get the ball rolling. And we are always so grateful. We are always so grateful to the college, not just the college programs, but more importantly, the Texas high school football coaches that allow us to come in there to kind of see how their programs run and kind of pull back the curtains to see exactly what they do. So again, a lot of, the Texas high school college coaches across the board continue to address their gratitude for all the wonderful job that these Texas high school football coaches and just coaches across the board here in the Lone Star State. So again, we're almost wrapping up. I think everybody's eager to get to those Friday night lights. Before I get off here, of course, for all the Rebel fans, it's sad news coming out of Oxford, of course, with the unfortunate passing of freshman Corey Adams in Memphis, late Saturday. So again, condolences and continued prayers from all of us here at the Voice of College Football, Ole Miss Live, and all the Rebel family for the Adams family during this difficult time.
Well said, Leanne. Absolutely. Appreciate you being here. Safe drive home. And again, thanks for the report. Always good to see you.
Good to see you too. We will see you on Wednesday to talk more about Crude and Rebelins and wrap up here from the Texas football.
Thanks, Leanne. All right. Leanne Herring and myself typically get together, although we've run into some obstacles in recent weeks. But mark it down, Wednesday nights, 8:30 Eastern. That's On the Move. It's our big recruiting and transfer portal update show with Leanne each and every Wednesday at 8:30 Eastern. The Amazon link's in the description section of all the videos. I am not endorsing Amazon, but basically when you shop on Amazon, please use the link that we provide. And give me a little reset here. So first of all, thank you so much for being here. We apologize for being so late today. Just ran into a number of technical issues that, depending on what the feed looks like right now, I don't know. Nobody has commented that they've had any audio or video issues, but if I'm breaking up or freezing or whatever, please let me know there in the chat. Not that there's much I can do about it, but again, we had a number of technical issues trying to get together at our regular time, 4 p.m. Eastern time, Monday through Friday. We will be here through the college football season and have been for, let's see, we've done about 80 to 90 shows at this point. So that's about 12 or 13 weeks that we've been here every weekday, Monday through Friday. I am going to leave the call-in line in the chat. There's a number of things that we want to get to. So on Tuesday, we kick off Big Ten Media Days. And not to be forgotten, we kick off ACC Media Days. We will call them ACC Media Days. They have to be different than everyone else and call themselves like ACC Kickoff, but it's basically the same deal. So the ACC and the Big Ten take the spotlight this week. And if you paid attention during SEC Media Days week and during Big 12 Media Days, you know that we will round up as many people as we possibly can, media members, to be guests here at the Voice of College Football to get you as great a coverage as we possibly can deliver here at the Voice of College Football, including not me at Big Ten Media Days, but Minnie Hunt is going to be covering Big Ten Media Days for us here at the Voice of College Football. So Minnie's in Vegas, and Minnie will be reporting for us each and every day from Big Ten Media Days. So be looking forward to those reports, coaches' interviews, players' interviews, and Minnie's reports, which leads us right into Big Ten fans. This all comes together. It all comes together oh so well that we've got Big Ten Big Ten Media Days and Minnie covering them. And we launch the new edition of the Big Ten Live Show. That's coming up Tuesday. That's just tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern time. So that's me. That's Corey Bratta from the Hawkeye of the Storm. So get set for that. So Big Ten Media Days, the next 3 days from Vegas. Corey Bratta and myself with the Big Ten Live Show. It's back. Corey and I and guests, 6 p.m. Eastern every Tuesday from now at least through the end of the football season. We do have a call coming in. We will take that call. Welcome into the Voice of College Football.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome in.
Oh, how are you?
I'm doing just fine. How are you?
Well, so I guess my question is about today's comments from the Big Ten commissioner.
Yes.
On Michigan's
yes.
Further sanctions, and I just kind of wanted to hear your thoughts on that because I know you've been tracking that a lot. So I just want to hear what your thoughts are now that he's come out and made a public statement about the whole sign stealing incident.
Yeah. So that was going to be the next topic we were going to hit on. I was going to read through the ESPN article. So this was first reported by Dan Wetzel of ESPN. And we sliced this up on the Ohio State show this morning. And so I will do a little bit more. But if you want to hear 4 different perspectives, then you can certainly check out the Ohio State show from earlier today over on the Ohio State channel. So the one
I've heard enough from Ohio State on this in regards to this. Like that's not.
Well, I do appreciate you calling me then. So I appreciate you considering me to be as objective as possible in dealing with this. The thing that I find curious, if you're not thinking PR and not thinking about what Tony Petitti is trying to do in regards to, again, the PR and the look and the optics of it, and just looking at the nuts and bolts of what's right or wrong or what's logical at this point, well, we've got an NCAA investigation going on that has yet to be announced. The findings have not been revealed. The conclusion we've not come to yet. So this is the last week of July, and Tony Petitti is petitioning the infractions committee in early June, so about 6 weeks ago, to say Michigan has suffered enough penalties and they have taken enough penalties on, cease and desist. This is enough. I'm putting in my plea on behalf of Michigan football that they've had enough penalties. But I find that kind of strange, just looking at this from a reasonable standpoint, that he is doing this 6 weeks ago, and here we have yet to find out the conclusion of their investigation. Now, with all the discussion that we've had here, which is probably hundreds of hours at this point over the last year and a half, I have stated a lot of things. A lot of those things have been defending the Michigan stance. A lot of those things have been anti-Michigan. I've tried to look at it from both standpoints. And the thing I will say is my ultimate conclusion in all of this is I am not going to make any complete final judgment on this until I know what the NCAA is uncovered and what their final conclusion is. And then I can determine, okay, I think that they are being fair or unfair or too lenient or too harsh or too something. But let's look at this real quick, because Tony Petitti yes, sent this letter. He did not meet in person because he was having hip surgery at the time. So let's just weed through this as we go. So let me pull up this article, and certainly feel free to comment at any time, sir, on any of this.
Tony Petitti was the first one to speak out when the suspension thing kind of happened. So him
Yes.
speaking out now is like more of the same. So we gave credence to him when he spoke out initially against Michigan, but I don't feel that same like credence being given right now that he's speaking out. First, when he did it, it was like, oh, he knows something. Now is, what do we know? And he's come out publicly just on the reverse side of things. So like, that's what I'm hearing.
Well, you're hearing correct, and that's a smart and logical conclusion he came to there, because it is kind of ironic that Tony Petitti was the guy who, even before anything was able to be investigated, just on the sheer surface of what was found out and first discovered, jumped on this early to suspend Jim Harbaugh for 3 games and try to get in front of this, and took that stance, I think because he was feeling pressure from the other schools in the conference. That's why I think he did that. And here we are a year and a half later, and he's jumping the gun in the other direction. And
with no pressure. Nobody's pressuring him. And it's not like he's not looking for favor, I'm sure, at this point. Not from Michigan, at least. He's not looking for, we passed the point of giving him favor for anything. So I don't think he's doing it for that reason. So now why is he doing it right now?
Well, the one angle that I can come up with here is, if we consider that Michigan could lose postseason play, let's say the NCAA is considering taking Michigan off the board for postseason play for 2 years. That's not necessarily going to hurt the Big Ten from the standpoint of placing teams in the postseason, because they'll select the next team, and the next team will slot up into the bowl game, and the next team should slot up into the playoff, unless Michigan has outstanding, excellent teams that could compete for national championships, and that will hurt the Big Ten if Michigan has the best team or one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the league those 2 seasons. And then also consider that less people are going to watch Michigan football for those 2 years, because the games are going to be deemed by a lot of people to be meaningless, in quotes, on the Michigan side, since they can't make postseason play, and the damage to TV ratings could be something that Tony Petitti's looking at.
But that seems a little far-fetched.
Okay.
All of those things seem a little, based on what the evidence has shown, what the suspensions were, and now what he's saying about it, as far as that being enough when it comes to this. So a lot of those things, and this is why I don't go on those Ohio, because they're speaking from a very far-fetched approach. Like, bring it back to where it is, have a conversation about where it is, and not what we assume it is. Based on all these different hypotheticals and scenarios, I mean, it makes for good content, but it's not the coverage of it, really. If you were covering it, then you would be waiting to hear what was going on. But people were covering it knowing as much as the commissioner knew, but making all these different assumptions and causing all these different scenarios to come into play of what if and what is, and it kind of leads like a lot of information out there, but none of it is really like evidence. And that's why I just kind of listen to it and just as the reporting goes, I would say you give the reporting, although you will speak on it. And on certain channels, they don't even really report; they just kind of speak on it.
Yeah. So my approach to all this and anything like this is that when we find out information, and if it can be confirmed, then we deal with that information and say, okay, this has been substantiated. This is confirmed. Okay, what does this mean? How bad is this? Or how not egregious is this? And then certainly people call up and they say, well, what about this? And what about if he did that? And what about if this person knew or that person knew? And I'll take on those scenarios and say, well, we don't know that, but we can have a discussion about if this is the case, or if that is the case, then we can take on those scenarios, but I'm not going to report them I'm not going to stretch the truth or what's been discovered so far into something that we don't know yet.
Right. And that's why I said, that's why I give you to listen to when it comes to at least reporting on it. Because I know at least you're going to report on it before you give your opinion. Like a lot of times people just make scenarios up based on what they think should happen or whatever scenario that they bought into. And I'm like, well, we don't know any of that stuff right now. Like we haven't heard any of that. Those are all hypotheticals based on what you think the severity of the sign stealing is and what it means to you. But that's debatable because sign stealing has been going on, and everybody who's playing football knows that. So it really depends on what you think about it. And Joe Cladd has spoke on it. Like the more people have played, the less they think it is a big something. But the less someone has played, the more they think it's a big something. Unless you're just a rival and then you just want smoke.
Yeah, you got to throw that out. You got to throw out rival opinions unless they're being very reasonable and logical about it, because the Michigan fan is, and this is logical. I'm not picking on the Michigan fan. I'm saying this about any fan base, any person that roots for a football team. You're going to tend to lean and defend your program, your team, your cause. But the rivals are going to do the exact opposite. Even the most logical are going to tend to want to think the worst and stretch the facts to their side. That's only human nature.
Right.
So in terms of, I got to admit this, and I've admitted this many times since this started, this is the crux of the situation that I wrestle with and that I struggle with. And I just told somebody that many of you would know this today. I when it comes right down to it, do I think that Michigan won a national championship or won 3 Big Ten championships because Connor Stallions cheated and stole signs and got video from other games? Do I think that that propelled them to those championships? No, I do not. That's not my opinion or my judgment of the situation. However, when someone cheats, the only reason you cheat is to gain an advantage to secure a victory. Otherwise, you wouldn't cheat.
Well, we gotta define cheating because, like, you know,
well, we know that they cheated. We know that he cheated, and by extension, they cheated.
So it wasn't, but we know that also it was a rule. It wasn't really a rule that was put in place for what he was using it for. It was because other schools couldn't have that sort of advantage. It wasn't to tilt the scales for it. Like, it wasn't put in place because it was known that type of scouting would give you a competitive advantage. Yes, although absolutely. It was just so that's where I'm like, okay, y'all mixing it. Y'all making it seem like it's the correlation to the advantage that you would get if you were the only team allowed to do this, and this was a rule that was put in place because it was a clear advantage that if you scouted this way, that you would have a clear advantage. Like, that wasn't the rule, but that's how everybody is kind of connecting it. It's
yes.
Like, oh, well, that's
exact situation would have happened 30 years ago, it would have been fine. But sometime in the early 1990s, somebody determined, well, not every program has the capabilities, the resources, the finances to go out and advance scout. Therefore, we're going to make it even for everyone, and you can no longer advance scout in this way with the technology and so forth.
Yes.
So, yes.
So when they go to the extreme case of cheating, like, oh, they needed that for the, like, that's not even with the rule. Like, that's the extreme.
Yeah, obviously, the advanced scouting was not deemed against the rules because it was deemed, well, this is not good for the game. This is not good, but this is a way to gain an unfair advantage that's not fair and not good and not clean sportsmanship. That's not why that rule was put in place.
But that's how most people are perceiving it. Like,
yeah,
that's if you look at probably the people that's gonna call it next, that's the notion that they're gonna go on. Like, sure. That's the advantage that they were getting.
Yeah, it was put in place so MAC schools and Sunbelt schools could compete in a more fair way because they didn't have the resources to do that. Let me give you two examples of completely ridiculous violations and situations that I can draw some conclusions to, and this is what I'm talking about. Like when Tom Brady put too much air in the footballs that he was throwing in the AFC Championship game in what was that, like 2012, 2013? Mm-hmm. Do I think because Tom Brady has thrown more passes in NFL history than anybody that gave him an unfair advantage or that caused him to throw the football well? No, we've seen him throw the football as well as anybody that's ever played. So I think it's ridiculous to think that caused New England to win an AFC Championship game by 38 points. No, but he did it. That's the problem. He did it. He did cheat just because he thought it was a slick night and cold and whatever. And so he did. So where do you draw that conclusion? Some people would just flat out say, you cheated, you cheat, and you compromise the game. Therefore, you should forfeit the game. Other people would say on the opposite end of the spectrum, well, the cheating, we know that Tom Brady can throw a football. He didn't need to do that, so it doesn't matter. You get me there?
Yeah, I get you.
Just like when Ohio State players sold their championship trophies and the gold pants and everything else for tattoos, my thought is that's a stupid thing to then parlay into, especially when it happened after the fact. They committed the violation after they won all that stuff. So why are you taking away things that they already won? Penalize them going forward. So I thought that was completely insane and still do to this day, but they broke the rules. So
I agree.
Even though I thought the rules were stupid, I'm not going to get into that.
That's agreed. That was. But, I mean, for me though, is again when those same fans come out and say the things that should be taken away. Because I always bring up Maurice Claret, and that's because he came out and publicly said he got paid more at Ohio State than he did at UCF. He came out and said that. So with him coming out and saying that publicly, he played in a national championship game. If you received payment during the time that you was at the school, shouldn't he be an ineligible player? Should he have been allowed to play? Should we go back and strip the title because he played in it? And he made plays in the game that caused them to win. Based on the morale that's out there. Not because I think it's fair, but just putting it under the same lens as what's fair, and if you were caught cheating, what should be the consequences of that? Based on that lens alone. Not my lens, but I'm going off of the fans, the rival fans, who's saying if they got caught cheating, these wins should be vacated, that championship should be stripped. So based on what we know, based on what he did, should it not be a consequence for that?
Well, there should be a consequence for everybody who cheats, period.
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah. My comment was simply there should be a consequence for anyone who cheats.
Yeah, and again, I'm not because that's past. So, but I'm like, since we're here now, we're bringing this back up as far as morale go. Then let's talk about it now. Then, because this conversation never came up before, but now that it's come up, Let's have a conversation about what cheating really looks like. What a competitive advantage look like. Is it more of a competitive advantage to pay your players to come to your school to play, or is it to steal signs? Like, which one is, if I'm paying top 5 or 5-star athletes to come to my program, is that more of a competitive advantage than someone who's stealing signs or less?
You know what? To me, it doesn't matter as much as it does that both schools cheated. So people get penalized.
No, again, I'm just going off of the lens that's being put out there. I'm just trying to, I am a Michigan fan, so I am going to be on the side and look from that lens back at Ohio State or back at any school who looks at Michigan in a that's an asterisk sort of way. Like, okay, well, let's go through what cheating really looks like in college football, and let's make sure that everybody was getting over the same hurdles as anybody who was playing fair.
But you do understand, and this isn't fair. What I'm about to say is not fair, but it's just like when you go 85 and a 65 and you get pulled over and there were 4 other dudes going 85 and a 65, not everyone's going to get caught.
Right. Agree. But that doesn't mean that don't mean that you wasn't going 80. So like don't then if I get the ticket, be like, all right, throw him in jail. And don't and throw away the key and give him a sentence long, like, and you was doing 85 too.
Here's the deal, sir, and I didn't catch your name.
Hello?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Damone.
Yeah, Damone. So I appreciate your call, but this is the crux of the matter for me as well. It's that we know that Connor Stalions cheated. Okay. We know that he advanced scout in a way that was against the rules. Okay. We know that. What we don't know, but seems very logical for me to deduct, is that he brought information back for the Michigan defensive staff to use. Now, if he was ineffective in what he was doing, they would have stopped him from doing it anymore. Like, he wouldn't have been doing it for 2.5 seasons if he was ineffective.
Well, his job was to decipher the signal. So if they think you're good at it, no one's going to say, "Hey, stop that." Without asking you, unless they're asking you how you're doing it.
Exactly.
And in which case he can say he don't have to go to the extent. He could just give them a general answer, and that'll be good enough for anybody if that's your job to do. Like, I don't know too many people who see somebody doing a good job and then go into grave details about really how you're doing it. In no case. So to think that in this case that because he was good at his job and they might have asked him like how, him being good at it, not even asking him like, oh, well, how you're doing this? Like,
Sure.
I mean, you're really good at it.
I understand your defense there. Now, the next step is there a paper trail? And my memory doesn't serve me well enough in this case. It should, because of how much I've talked about it and read about it for the last 1.5 years, to determine how much of a paper trail is there from Connor Stalions to the Michigan staff and to Jim Harbaugh.
And what we know is that information, as much as they have looked for it, they have in their possession. And that's what I'm saying. If it was given to the Big Ten commissioner and he's seen all the evidence and he made a ruling either whether it be before or after, and now he's coming out and saying based on the findings, like, that should be it. Like, as far as the penalties going moving forward, like, that should be it.
Yeah,
that's a big statement, because people's talking about bowl bans and strip this, and like, for him to just give those games last year and say that's it, like, he's not even looking for games this year. Based on what he's saying, based on what everything's settled in front of him, based on the settlings in front of him, he's saying last year was enough. So now, how bad was it?
Well, and we are talking about the commissioner of the Big Ten, so we can sit here and conjecture about how much he would be sticking up for the other teams versus how much he he would be protecting the interests of the Big Ten, which is to have Michigan on the field playing eligible football.
But everybody wanted Michigan here. No school was back in Michigan. No school, I don't think, would feel sorry if the commissioner came out and suspended him for more games. As far as that's concerned, like, he has more of the other schools wanting it, because it'll kind of validate their coaches as to why they lost, if they lost to Michigan. You know, that's one more thing that they can sit down and say, well, we didn't lose, you know, fairly. So that loss right there shouldn't count against me on my resume. Like, that's for anybody that Michigan played. I haven't seen one school come out in support of him and saying, hey, you know, we've kind of done the same thing, or hey, I don't really think nobody's in the Big Ten has come out on Michigan's behalf, which is fine. I mean, we understand that, but I'm saying it doesn't give the commissioner any reason to do that. To me.
Yeah. So here we are at the start, which is basically we're waiting for the NCAA to give
Which we should have been doing that from the beginning, which I feel but you know.
Yeah, but we found out information, and so there's nothing wrong with taking that information and trying to understand it.
Postseason ban someone.
No, I'm
titles and games.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about every few months we've been given more and more information to where we can draw more and more conclusions. So you can't expect, we're living in a society of free speech. We're going to talk about it. We're going to discuss. Even people that don't have a stake one way or the other are still going to discuss, okay, what did that mean? We just found this out, or we just found out these text messages were unveiled. So people are going to draw more and more conclusions because we've got more and more information.
And all that information, we're back to square one. Like, with all of that new information, new findings, the suspension from the beginning is that's the only one that he sees fit. And we don't even know if that was even based on what we still don't know what the evidence is. We don't know if he still jumped the gun. We still don't even know if he jumped the gun on the suspensions and how many games based on the evidence. Once we know what the evidence is, you know, really.
Well, at some point it becomes this is not all objective. The information is hopefully objective, but somebody's decision on how severe these infractions are, that's up to the person that's ruling. So when you say that have they gone far enough with their penalties, and you believe that they have, well, that depends on your judgment of how bad the cheating is.
Well, that's not me. That's the commissioner. He believes. I didn't feel as strongly as most people about the science done things. Play in the game. It was kind of ridiculous to think that was illegal, because I played up to a little bit of college, but that was what I've known to do every football season. Go to the other opponents' games and scout them and record them, and you know, like, that's been going on as long as I've known football. So to come up and say like that's against the rules, I'm just not so caught up in that to where it's like that. I know that determined the outcome of games, because I mean, everybody got somebody scouting, you know, deciphering signals. Like, everybody got somebody doing that.
Well, from the time that this broke on social media, I saw the football community, and I'm talking about coaches and players, the people that really know how much this would affect a game. I saw them pretty split. You would think that it would be all in one direction, like, no, this didn't help it at all, or this was huge, one or the other, but that wasn't the case. I saw everything across the spectrum.
Yeah, and again, that's why I say, you know, I've been following a little on certain, you know, things that you mentioned on it, and it has been more reporting than opinion, and I can appreciate that, at least, so I know like what is being updated versus what is somebody's opinion about what's being updated. Because you get a lot of opinions and it'd be like, well, I didn't hear anything about this. You know, what I'm hearing is brand new. And then I go and look at it and nobody really said anything and nothing really came out. And I'm like, well, there's people reporting that things came out, but I don't hear any official word.
Yeah.
So they said we have till August until the official word come out. Then
Yes.
I want to hear everybody's opinion.
Okay. Well, we appreciate you calling, man.
I appreciate you.
Yeah. Have a good one.
You too.
Bye-bye. Yeah, this stuff is not easy to weed through. And I certainly am not, have never been shy about or needed to pull punches on my opinion. However, I don't claim to be an expert on everything by any. Actually, I'm an expert at very few things. So, when it comes to, let's say, legal matters, I will read the articles. I will determine what I can based on my knowledge of the law, and then I'll throw up my hands and say, well, this is what I believe is right or reasonable or logical or a logical deduction from my vantage point, but I don't know the law to that extent, and all of those things. I played football at a very low level. I've been watching football. I probably watch as much football or more football than anybody listening or watching right now. I've shoved my eyes in front of football for 50 years. So do I know a lot about football? Well, it depends who you compare me to. But I have never said I'm some kind of scout or that I can coach the game or anything close to that. So then I back off on certain opinions. I am hesitant to call out play calling, for example, because I think people are ridiculous in calling out play callers. Have I done it before? Yes. When I think it's pretty obvious that a play caller has been unprepared or has not been able to adapt to certain situations. But I'm not here ranting and raving about play calling, for example, every week, because the guys that are calling the plays on Saturday know and have forgotten more football than I will ever know. So I don't, again, try to be or pretend to be an expert at everything. All right. So yeah, that is the Tony Petiti. This article, basically is just a rehash of everything that's gone on until now. All it is basically telling us is that Tony Petiti sent a letter to the NCAA Infractions Committee in early June to say the position that we hold at the commissioner's office is that there has been enough penalties thrown at the Michigan football program that's enough. There's been enough. They have met the requirements of their transgressions, basically. And the rest of it is just rehashing everything that has gone down over the last 3 to 4 years. The big question here that I'm going to raise when we go into conjecture mode. So this is what I do. This is another angle that I take to these situations. I try to cut it straight and say, if everyone is honest, if everyone is competent, so these are two of the big issues in this world. People are not competent and people are not honest. If everybody was competent at their job and if everyone was honest, we would have a much different world. But we don't. So do I have the right to accuse Tony Petiti of having some incendiary reason or some other reason to take this stance No, he's not shown himself to me to be some type of a underhanded type character in any such way. He also doesn't have a long enough track record for me to trust him to be an outstanding, upstanding guy that's going to always fight for justice. I don't know. I don't believe that his public and his professional record is that extensive for us to draw those conclusions. So this is the way I approach these situations. Let's take it dead on from this person is competent and this person is honest. Then, unless we know otherwise. If we know otherwise from other situations, from other, whether this is a coach, a player, regardless of the position, okay, we have evidence that this person is just beyond reproach, that their character is outstanding. And those people are very few and far between. Or this person is shady. They've shown themselves to do X, Y, and Z. They are, the Jackie Sherrill of the 1980s and 90s who went to Pitt, put them on probation. Texas A&M, put them on probation. Mississippi State, put them on probation. There's kind of a trend there. So then you can draw some conclusions there. But otherwise, I hit it dead on with this situation to say, okay, competent and honest. So why is he taking this stance? However, I don't think it's unreasonable, and I think it's part of our job here to say, what other factors could be involved that could cause Tony Petitti to not necessarily take the high road or the path of justice and just simply to be working an angle that is more politically motivated, financially motivated, to help the Big Ten and to help himself. And it's not a bad thing to ask those questions and to try to determine what those angles could be. And I tried to hit on some of those, not accusing him of doing those things, because that would be slanderous and I would not go in that direction. We have too much slander going on social media. I see it every day, people being slandered and people slandering other people with no evidence or very little evidence and not having the full story. I see that all over the place, and that drives me crazy. So I will not slander anybody on here. So I'm not going to accuse Tony Petitti of anything that just because I can conjure up an angle or two of something that he might be doing, but I'll bring it up as a possibility. Okay, so let's make sure that those two things are straight. ACC Media Days are this week. Big Ten Media Days are this week in Vegas. Minnie Hunt is representing the voice of college football out in Vegas. She will have reports for us starting on Tuesday. And we will also do our best to round up reporters and media types from the ACC and bring them on the show Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday this week to talk the Big Ten and to talk the ACC. We had a report earlier from Leanne Herring. She was at the Texas High School Coaches Association and meetings and workshops there, and heard from Steve Sarkisian, Mike Elko, Joey McGuire, all the big coaches there in Texas, Dave Aranda, and so forth. All right, folks, the Amazon link's in the description section of all the videos. When you shop on Amazon, please use the link that we provide. That would help our show and our channel and our network beyond what you can imagine. If you simply did that, when you shop on Amazon, just grab the link in the description section of this video or any video. It's right next to the word that says Amazon in cap letters. Grab that link and use the link. All right, folks, appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. As it says on the banner here, we are looking for hosts for our College Football After Dark show on Sunday nights. Right now, we got Doreen and we've got Minnie, and they do a fabulous job with their new show, The Ladies of College Football. But we would like to follow that up with a continuation of our College Football After Dark show. So if you know any good hosts, make any recommendations to me, and we will get after those folks to try to pull together and continue our history of the College Football After Dark show. All right. The next time you will see me. Oh, yes. I'm sorry. We had a super chat coming in. Thank you so much for reminding me. I apologize. Super chat coming in from our buddy Austin. Sports Talk with Austin. Happy Media Days, Mark. What's your biggest thing you look for when you watch or listen to the Media Days? Example, something a coach says, players, etc. Well, I'm not some grizzled 70-year veteran of Media Days, so I've not attended so many of these, but I've been to a good 10 of them at the SEC and the Big Ten and the American Conference, so maybe more than that. Oh boy, I have to admit they bore me to death now. I used to enjoy them, and I've got to admit, did I watch any of the Big 12 Media Days? I shouldn't say I didn't watch any. I watched, I can't even remember the coaches now. I think I watched Kenny Dillingham talk for 5 minutes, and I watched some other coach. Who would that have been? Some other coach. I don't remember. It wasn't Deion Sanders. Can't even remember. Another coach I watched for maybe 5 or 10 minutes. I watched Brian Kelly for 5 or 10 minutes. I watched Kalen DeBoer for 5 or 10 minutes. Watched Mike Elko 5 or 10 minutes. Mark Stoops, watched him for 5 or 10 minutes. You get the picture. These guys were talking for 45 minutes. I watched them for 5 or 10 minutes. It's just, especially when you're new to the industry, like the first few that I covered, really all the ones that I covered in the late 90s into the 2000s in the SEC were fun. I enjoyed it. It was great at the time. I'm 23, 24, 25 years old. Of course. It's exciting that you're in the same room with Steve Spurrier and Tommy Tuberville and Jackie Sherrill and whoever else was around at that time, Philip Fulmer and so forth. Yeah. So what would I ask these guys now that they would actually answer? See, it would be much more interesting if you gave them a truth serum. You give them a truth serum and sit them down, because I would get beyond the coach speak. Now, I asked James Franklin a couple of years ago at Big Ten Media Days, I said something to the effect of, how much do you recruit and how much do you prepare your team during the off season? Recruiting, development, and preparation during the off season is specifically with Ohio State and Michigan in mind. That's the question I asked James Franklin. And he was actually somewhat honest. He didn't say, oh, everybody's the same. We're our own program. We don't think about anyone else. No, he was fairly, not completely honest, but he gave me more than I figured. He basically said, yeah, they are the teams that have ruled this conference, and we do keep an eye on them, and we do prepare with the angle that we need to beat those two teams. I'm going to switch sports on you and go to basketball and tell you that the first SEC basketball media days I went to, it was kind of funny because it was the first question I ever asked, because it was like the first day of the first time I ever went. And I did basketball, was the first thing I ever, 1995. And Mississippi State head coach Richard Williams, little did we know he was going to take his team to the Final Four the next year. is sitting there, and this guy didn't give reporters any kind of break. If you didn't ask a good question, he would tell you that's a lousy question, or that doesn't make any sense, or that's not logical. Or I remember somebody asking him one time, how do you feel? What did they ask him? It was something about controlling his own destiny. Oh, he was asked one time, do you feel like you control your own destiny? He said, do I feel like it? We either have you looked at the standings? Either we control our own destiny or we don't control. It doesn't matter how we feel about it. And on this day, these reporters were tossing out all sorts of different questions, blah, 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 blah. And then I finally got my question in, and I wanted him to compare and contrast the skill sets of his 2 point guards. And he stopped the news conference. He goes, did you guys hear that question? That was actually a legitimate question. That's actually a good question. Everybody should be listening and taking notes. That's how you ask a question. So I don't know if that answers your question, Austin, but yeah, I could come up with, I think, one decent question for every coach in the Big Ten and the ACC concerning their specific situation, or maybe not just a question, but a comment to kind of challenge them. Matt Rule, for some reason, seems to be running scared every time he makes a comment about the national scene, the playoff scene, or the playoff format, or the schedule. He seems to take this run for cover kind of approach that we don't want to play anyone and we want the playoff field to be 32 teams so we could make it. I would ask him about that. All right, folks. Appreciate you being here. Will ND asking about Nolan Richardson. You never thought you would get some Nolan Richardson here. I don't specifically remember. I know I asked him questions, but I don't recall any of Nolan Richardson. You know who was a great interview was Rick Pitino. Man, that guy, smart as a whip, and just would explain and talk and talk and talk and talk. So he was a great interview. Yeah, I was at the SEC basketball tournament when Arkansas was when they were at their peak, with Corliss Williamson and those guys, the two guards, Day and Mayberry, and they were just tearing it up. Jason is saying, nobody's worried about your dwarf at quarterback, Julian Sand. Nobody is concerned about an Ohio State starting quarterback. Am I reading that correctly? Nobody's concerned. Nobody's worried. Nobody is giving that any. This might as well be Purdue's starting quarterback. That makes little sense. Oh, the Ohio State, Michigan fans are going at it in the chat. All right, folks. It's been a nice little show. We appreciate you being here, and we'll be back on Tuesday here's the lineup, new lineup for Tuesday for football seasons, 4 p.m. Eastern time right here for this show, the College Football Show, 5 p.m. Eastern, Iowa show, Corey Bratta and myself on the Iowa channel. Then we come back here at 6 p.m. Eastern time for the Big Ten Live show. See you then. When I leave the room, it goes on mute. So, all right. So I see that, the one person in the chat who would have any knowledge of my former broadcasting career would try to hit me with a zinger, trying to expose my age. Why would you want to do that? You certainly don't want to do that in front of certain people, my good friend. Wink, wink. You wouldn't want to do that in front of certain people, although that certain person would have no idea who Bear Bryant was anyway. So, all right. See you on Tuesday.